Welcome, this is Elbro, and with this video I will deliver a guide for Stormbringer Enhancement Shaman in M+, in the War Within Season 2. I will cover both the basics and the advanced threats needed to unleash the full potential of the Stormbringer hero tree. I start with a quick comparison to Totemic. I would say that both hero trees are viable for all key levels, but Storm cannot really unleash its full potential in lower keys. Stormbringer is slightly better if your pulls fit your 2-minute cooldowns. It is especially powerful in single target if you prepare your Tempest properly, and even more so if you get a PI, which you should always get in any setup on single target. Totemic on the other hand delivers unconditional and more consistent damage. Totemic also scales better beyond 6 targets and can deliver some serious uncapped AoE damage. Both hero trees can perform in any scenario, but Stormbringer needs better preparation to reach comparable numbers in AoE. Besides that, in my opinion, Stormbringer is simply a lot more fun to play than Totemic. Although most players seem to have switched to Storm for M+, I would still expect the big majority of players to see better results on Totemic. It is simply easier to play on a mediocre level. Storm needs at least a basic level of cooldown planning to outperform Totemic. But if you are willing to learn, pay attention to this guide and focus on understanding the spec's core mechanics, I am confident that you will be satisfied with your future performance. Alright, let's start talking about stats. Our base stats are Haste and Mastery. You want them on most of your gear pieces, especially on neck and both rings. You get them up to roughly 20k rating. It's just a rough idea. At this point, you're probably seeing that your sim will tell you to go a bit into a crit and worse as well. You just follow that. It's not worth it to spend too much time optimizing your stats because the differences in value is rather small. So yeah, just try to get high amount of haste and mastery and then do whatever the sim tells you to do. One thing to note, I would not follow the sim if it tells you to craft rings on neck with different stats than those. You can just swap them around on end shards and gems. I think you should just keep your neck and rings on haste and mastery and optimize the rest the stats with the rest of your gear. The same goes for weapon enchants. You can just take 2 stats enchants and sim what the guide tells you to take. I think this one is crit and this is mastery that I have right now. This special gear. For trinkets you want 1 unused trinket and 1 passive one. As the unused one you should choose either House of Cards or the Sigil for Priority. Both are somewhat equal in value. I think Priority trinket is a little bit better, but you should always choose the one that has higher item level. If you play the Priority trinket, you should make sure though that your mastery is higher than your haste, so it ensures that you get mastery when you use it, and you should also macro it in a way that you use your trinket before your racial, so your racial cannot fuck your stats up. If you get haste from the racial and then use the trinket, you will most likely pump your haste to higher level than your mastery and get haste, which is not preferred. For the passive ones, there's a lot of options. Pacemaker is the best one you can get from dungeons, so it's the best one you can get on mythic item level, but there are like a few delve trinkets that are also really good. So if you have them on heroic or on an heroic trinket here, you should consider the delve trinkets as well. For some dungeons and for really high key gameplay, there's also Eye of Kazan, which is especially good in dungeons like Cinder Meadery or Prayer of the Sacred Flame, where it's easy to keep high uptime on the stacks. It requires, however, a moderate pace of chaining the pulls. So if you're parking a key or you're just not playing really high keys, I would not advise you to play it. But if you can make use of this really well, it's the best trinket available in the game. Embellishments are really underwhelming in this expansion. I just take the Ascension one and double it with the Rubian enchant embellishment on the cloak, and then you should not bother thinking about it anymore. For the rings, the Jester is really powerful. It's good if you can access it on Mythic. Even on Heroic, it's probably better than Mythic Ring, but I have to say I didn't sim it for a long time, so I'm not sure on this one. The Circlet is also really powerful, even for its low item level. You will eventually replace it with a Mythic item level ring, just because of the additional stamina. Even if it doesn't sim better, it should just take a Mythic track ring. Depending on your stats, it might even be an upgrade to get another ring. For me it was not, but the difference is really small, so you just drop it in the end. It's just a really low priority to drop it in your gearing process. Maybe it's worth to mention that for the tier pieces, it doesn't really matter what slots you're picking. The helmet and the shoulders are somewhat locked, of course, because they both have haste and mastery. The chest is also still really good with the high amount of haste, but if you take the legs or the hands on tier set, it's kinda whatever. For talents, I will go over all the 3 trees, the Shaman tree, the Stormbringer tree, the Enhancement tree, but I will not go over every single one of the talents. For the Enhancement tree, this setup is pretty much locked in. I didn't change my talents on the Enhancement tree once in the whole season. I don't think it is worth it to change anything here. There might be some minor optimizations for specific cases. For example, you could take Unrelenting Storms for a little bit more single target DPS. But it's not amazing. It's like in the range of 1% gain, maybe 1.5%, but it also only works exclusively in single target. So it's completely useless on the whole other part of the dungeon. And even on some bosses where you have extra targets or bring funnel onto it, it doesn't do anything. So you can take it if you like to, but I would not recommend it. The hero tree is also pretty much locked in. You just take Supercharge for the extra Maelstrom generation to fury your Tempests. You take Electroshock for the movement speed burst every time you use a Tempest. And usually you take Nature's Protection for the Lightning Shield DR. You can take Surging Currents in some situations, like Dark Flame Cleft, if you want to support with healing on the 3rd boss, but in general it's a rather weak talent. The class tree offers some flexibility. There's a few damage nodes that you always take, like Nature's Fury, which is just a flat damage buff, or Fire and Ice, and there's some damage reductions that you should also always take, like Elemental Warding. Besides that, it's mostly just utility that you can swap around, although most of it is not that useful in the current dungeon rotation. Like Cap Totem for stuns, maybe Double Cap for a double set of stuns, and Thunderstorm paired with the Knockup are of course really powerful CC tools. You always want to take those. This is pretty much locked in. But things like Decurse, Tremor Totem, and Poison Cleansing Totem don't really see much use this season. Just talk about some of them that are noteworthy. Shaman is this cool passive thing that you get a damage reduction every time you interrupt a spell, and you get a damage reduction for that specific school of the spell. It stacks up to 2 times, so if you interrupt consistently, you can stack up a 30% damage reduction for specific magic schools. As an example, this is really powerful in Priory of the Sacred Flame, especially in the area around the 2nd boss and afterwards, where you have those priests that cast Holy Smite and Greater Heal. Both are holy spells that you can get interrupt, and you get the 15 or 30% damage reduction against holy spells. And we have the paladins here that do the frequent Sacred Toll cast, which does a lot of holy damage. So if you manage to get the interrupts on those priests consistently, you're really safe in this whole area. And this is the same upstairs here. There's not as many priests here as downstairs. You also have the fire mage that cast fire spells, but the fire DR doesn't really help. But it's just an example. Let's talk about some noteworthy talents. You should always take Earthgrab Totem to just support with roots and slows, Windrush Totem to support with movement speed bursts for your group, and Stone Bulwark Totem to have another shield for yourself, although it's not really powerful considering it has a 3 minutes cooldown and it doesn't even shield you for half of your HP. On the left you have talents to support with healing. They are all really underwhelming though. Healing Stream Totem got buffed by 100% recently, but it still heals for almost nothing. The only nice part of it is the 6% elemental damage DR, which is useful on some bosses. As an example, Floodgate 3rd boss, you have a dot for nature damage up basically during the whole fight, and it just gives a 6% DR to random party members. Chain Heal is really undertuned. I tried to play with it a bit. Even if you pair with Surging Currents, it still heals nothing, so it's never worth taking. Earth Shield also heals really little. It also doesn't trigger from dots, only from direct damage, so it takes a while to consume all of the charges, and considering the charges don't even heal 200k, it's not going to do much. It gives you 20% increased healing, so the only real use case I see for this is 3rd boss in Darkflame Cleft. When you know your healer is going to struggle, you can at least support with this and put it on yourself and the healer, for example, or some other weak party member, and give them a healing surge from time to time. Besides that, I usually have Froststrike skilled, but you really don't need it. It does nothing in terms of damage. You use it a few times in a key. I use it 4 times this key. It's not there for DPS, but you can slow some mobs if needed, or pull the mob if needed, which can be useful sometimes, but it's also a point that you can just drop forever and forget in this season. It was useful in the past when you played Hailstorm, but it is not anymore. Let's continue with a quick summary of all relevant DPS abilities and how you will roughly use them with only little explanation. I assume that the default talent tree is being used. Stormstrike has 2 charges, does physical damage to a single target, can trigger Wind Fury and triggers Crash Cleave if the buff is active. Its cooldown can be reset by other abilities. Stormstrike is your most frequently used ability in single target and is frequently used in AoE as well. Crash Lightning. It hits all targets in a cone in front of you for nature damage and can trigger Wind Fury. If it hits 2 or more targets, you get a buff for 12 seconds that makes Stormstrike and Lava Lash trigger a nature damage cone as well. Its cooldown is reduced for every target hit by Chain Lightning. You will use it almost on cooldown in AoE and regularly in single target. Side note, it also increases the damage of your next Stormstrike by 25% for each target hit, up to 150%. Flame Shock. It's a fire damage dot, usually only used once per fight and then maintained via other abilities. It's limited to 6 targets. Lava Lash does fire damage to a single target. If Flame Shock is active on that target, its duration will be refreshed and the dot will be spread to 5 nearby targets. It's used to initially spread Flame Shocks when engaging a new pack. Serves as a low priority filler besides that. Lightning Bolt. It's a Maelstrom spender that does lightning damage to a single target. It will be replaced by Tempest when available, which I explain in the next section. That also means that Tempest is on the same keybind as Lightning Bolt automatically. Chain Lightning. It's a Maelstrom spender that does lightning damage to up to 5 targets. Use it instead of Lightning Bolt against 2 or more targets. It increases the damage of your next Crash Lightning and reduces its cooldown for each target hit. Voltaic Blaze. It has a chance to proc when spending Maelstrom and replaces your next Flame Shock. It hits up to 6 targets for moderate nature damage and applies a Flame Shock to them. You will make use of most of the procs, but only outside of your cooldowns. Primordial Wave and Primordial Storm. I usually just call them P-Wave and P-Storm. P-Wave has 30 seconds cooldown and hits all targets afflicted by Flame Shock. You gain 5 Maelstrom and 10% haste plus 4% per extra Flame Shock target for 12 seconds. After being used, it is replaced by P-Storm for 15 seconds. P-Storm is a Maelstrom spender that does a hit combo of 3 hits in a circle around you, followed by an empowered Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt. The cooldown of P-Wave starts when pressing P-Wave, so you don't have to instantly send P-Storm as well. P-Wave will be used on City in most situations, but requires a setup explained in the Lightning Rod section. Doom Winds. It has 1 minute cooldown and makes you deal Storm Strike damage in a circle around you for 8 seconds. It also increases your chance to trigger Wind Fury to almost 100%. It's used on cooldown in most situations, usually paired with Ascendance. Ascendance. It's a 2 minutes cooldown and lasts 15 seconds. It makes you generate 2 Maelstrom every second. Your Storm Strike will be replaced by Wind Strike. Wind Strike does a bit more damage, but more importantly, it consumes up to 5 Maelstrom to cast a Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt / Tempest. The simplified playstyle just spams Wind Strike. The usage of Ascendance requires some setup like mentioned with P-Wave. It will be explained later. The theory. Let's talk about the core concepts of Stormbringer Enhancement Shaman. In this section I will explain how abilities and noteworthy passive abilities work. This section is most important for you to be able to truly understand the theory of Enhancement Shaman and how to maximize your DPS. An explanation on how to actually do it in practice follows in the next section. The basic idea is to generate and spend as much Maelstrom weapon stacks as possible. I will refer to them simply as Maelstrom for the rest of the guide. Maelstrom is spent by casting Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Tempest and P-Storm for increased damage per Maelstrom consumed. In regular combat you never use those spells with less than 5 Maelstrom and Maelstrom caps at 10. Lightning Bolt is only used in single target situations and fully replaced by Chain Lightning at 2 or more targets. Maelstrom spenders are not only your hardest hitting abilities, but each 40 Maelstrom spent will also give you a Tempest. Tempest replaces your next Lightning Bolt and deals a massive amount of damage to your current target and reduced damage to targets around it. On top of that, casting a Tempest will spawn a Lightning Bolt for 15 seconds, which increases your nature and physical damage done by 10% each. That means each Tempest does not only hit hard, but also buffs our damage done for a short time, because almost all of our damage is of type nature or physical. Besides spending 40 Maelstrom, you will also progress towards the Tempest via Awakening Storms. Each Storm Strike, Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning has a chance to deal a bit of extra damage, but more importantly give you a stack of Awakening Storms. Upon reaching your 4th stack, you will generate the Tempest. You don't have to do anything special to play around Awakening Storms. It will just stack up passively, but for advanced gameplay it can be important to know which abilities can trigger it. I will explain this in the advanced gameplay section at the end of the guide. The last note about Tempest is that it is absolutely crucial to know when you will get your next Tempest. Since the game does not provide any information about how much Maelstrom you have already spent for your next Tempest, which is criminal if you ask me, you have to rely on a Vigora to track your progress. On top of that, you want a Vigora to see how many Tempest stacks you currently have and how much time you have left to spend it. You can hold up to 2 Tempests at the same time. Now that we know why spending as much Maelstrom as possible is so important, we have to look at how to generate Maelstrom efficiently. You have a chance to generate Maelstrom each time you deal damage with a melee weapon. Also, when you spend Maelstrom on Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning or Tempest, it can generate 2 stacks via Supercharge and even refund all stacks via static accumulation. Less important to know in practice is that Voltaic Blaze also gives 1 Maelstrom, Stormbringer and Lava Lash have 50% to give 1 additional Maelstrom, and during Ascendance you passively generate 2 Maelstrom every second. The Maelstrom refund happens with a small delay after spending, and it's very important to react to it since you want to avoid overcapping Maelstrom. It can also trigger multiple times back to back if you are lucky and makes your DPS spike massively. In single target you will mostly generate Maelstrom with Storm Strike, and we are spending Maelstrom because of refunds. When fighting multiple targets, your Maelstrom generation will be increased with each extra target because of Crash Lightning. If you hit 2 or more targets with Crash, your Storm Strike and Lava Lash will deal Crash Lightning damage in a cone in front of you. Each hit with this passive cleave also has a chance to generate Maelstrom. Another passive but very important Maelstrom source is Wind Fury. It has a chance to be triggered by Storm Strike, Active Crash and White hits. Each Wind Fury proc does 3 hits that all have a chance to give you Maelstrom. That means that all targets hit by Active Crash can trigger Wind Fury attacks which can generate Maelstrom. Keep in mind that the amount of Maelstrom you actually get is always random. Hitting 5 mobs with Crash can give you all from 0 to to 10 Maelstrom. You don't have to memorize this Wind Fury blah blah. In practice, it's enough to know that Crash is your best generator in AoE situations, and that Crash and Stormstrike generate even more Maelstrom while Doomwinds is active. Lightning Rods. The final Stormbringer mechanic you need to know about is Lightning Rods. The primary target of your Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning and Tempest casts becomes a Lightning Rod for 8 seconds. The Lightning Rod can be active on multiple targets, and each of them takes 10% of all damage that you deal with Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning and Tempest. This essentially means that each active rod makes you deal 10% additional damage with your spenders. This mechanic becomes extremely important in bigger pools, but it's also the reason why you might rip aggro. Imagine a pool with 10 mobs, and one of them has a lightning rod. And let's just assume Tempest does the same damage to every target, which is only a minor simplification. Now what happens is that every mob takes X damage from a Tempest, which is in total 10x damage. 10% of that is 1x damage, so that one target with the lightning rod takes Tempest damage directly, plus the same amount in additional time via lightning rod. He effectively takes 2 times Tempest damage in one global, which is absolutely massive. Now if the pool is even bigger, the lightning rod will replicate more total damage to that one mob than it takes directly from Tempest. That means that each lightning rod takes an immense amount of extra damage. This can be dangerous for your health because tanks usually have their attention on 1, maybe 2 priority targets, but your additional lightning rods will be on random targets with less tank threat. You will be pleased to hear that you don't have to pay attention to the lightning rod mechanic in a special way. You will usually not actively spread lightning rods via chain lightning by swapping to different targets, because chain lightning will apply a lightning rod to a different target hit if the primary target already has a rod. When using Tempest, you will also rather target a high priority mob or one in the center of the pack than trying to apply an additional rod. There are some exceptions where actively swapping is a minor gain that I would consider worth it, but it's not important for now. In conclusion, it is usually not important to pay attention to lightning rods, except for one case I did not mention yet, P-Wave. When you use P-Wave, it damages all targets afflicted by Flame Shock and also applies a lightning rod to each of them. If you're facing only 2 or 3 mobs, it's not that crazy, since keeping up a rod on 2 is nothing special. But if the pool is bigger, you have up to 6 extra rods for 8 seconds that you usually could not sustain. Remember, each rod replicates 10% of your spender's total damage. That means that the moment you press P-Wave, you will deal up to 60% additional damage with your spenders for the next 8 seconds. This is absolutely massive and results in P-Wave being our strongest offensive cooldown in AoE situations by a big margin, and it only has a CD of 30 seconds. But those rods don't deal any damage themselves, they only deal damage when you hit something with your spenders. And since Tempest hits the hardest and is not capped to 5 targets, it is crucial that you have Tempests available when you press P-Wave. You will have to prepare those Tempests before P-Wave comes off CD, because you want to use it again as soon as possible. Now that you've listened to the theory, let's see how this knowledge will be applied in practice. I will divide this section in 3 subsections: regular DPS priority, pooling and CD usage. The regular DPS priority stripped of cooldowns is fairly simple. Remember that our goal is to generate efficiently and spend as much Maelstrom as possible. In single target, that means you want to follow this somewhat simplified top to bottom priority. Spend when you have 9 or 10 Maelstrom as highest priority. You will cast a Tempest if you have one and a lightning bolt otherwise. Your highest priority generator is Stormstrike if it has 2 charges. Since its CD can be reset by itself and other abilities, it can happen that you use it multiple times in a row. Your next 3 efficient generators are Crash Lightning with stacks of aforesaid, Voltaic Blaze and your second charge of Stormstrike, roughly in that order. The exact priority of those 3 matters very little, and tracking your aforesaid stacks is almost neglectable. I give you a few thoughts on this in the advanced section. If none of these generators is available, you spend your Maelstrom on Lightning Bolt if you have at least 5. Should you have a Tempest, you will also make use of Lava Lash as a low priority generator. Last to mention, using Flame Shock as a filler is better than not pressing anything at all, although it does very little damage. When hitting 2 or more targets, Crash Lightning rises to be our best generator, and we use Chain Lightning as a spender instead of Lightning Bolt. Since we generate more Maelstrom on average when hitting multiple targets, our spending rules change slightly to avoid overcapping too much. The generator priority for small and mid-sized pulls is Crash over Voltaic Blaze over Stormbringer. In pulls up to 6, Voltaic Blaze deals a lot of direct damage. In big pulls, my estimation is 10 plus mobs, Stormbringer gains value over Voltaic Blaze because it's a much better generator. Spending rules are a bit loose. Try to spend Tempest with 10 Maelstrom, otherwise use Chain Lightning. There are too many conditions to be considered for you to be able to write down an accurate priority list. In practice, it matters little at what exact amount of Maelstrom you spend with Chain Lightning. It's more important to decide quickly instead of losing GCDs. You will naturally get a feel for how much Maelstrom you can expect to generate with your next ability. Voltaic Blaze will always give you 1 Maelstrom, while Crash and Stormbringer will generate more if you hit more targets. As an example, hitting 2 or 3 mobs again if you're at 8 Maelstrom is fine. If it's 6 instead, you might overcap too much and should just spend with 8. Pooling Tempests. While this strategy can be considered advanced, it is fundamental to deal lots of DPS, so you have to know about it even if you don't make use of it perfectly. Pooling Tempests means that you are not using them instantly, but rather save them for P-Wave or Ascendance if the remaining CD is low. This is possible because you can store up to 2 Tempests and they last 30 seconds. The reason for pooling a single target is that each Lightning Wolf massively increases your damage during Ascendance. In AoE, you want Tempest for your P-Wave Lightning Rods as explained in the theory section. Pooling Tempest in AoE is simple, as you just use Chain Lightning instead of Tempest as a spender. You should always aim to pool 2 Tempests for your next Ascendance and at least 1 Tempest for your P-Wave, but of course 2 is better. You might just not be able to make perfect use of both if you are unlucky with Maelstrom generation. Pooling Tempest becomes more important the bigger the pool is. In single target this strat works as well, but you will have to use Chain Lightning as a spender. Yes, you've heard correctly. You should use Chain Lightning in single target if you're holding a Tempest and your Ascendance will be ready soon. You will, however, not pool for P-Wave in single target. Pooling is done every time when your current pool is about to end. When packs are close to dying, you already want to prepare your next P-Wave window. That means you absolutely don't want to execute targets with Tempest, but keep it for the next pack so you don't lose momentum. It will also happen that your P-Wave gets ready again in the same pool. That means you will have to pool mid-combat. To give you some orientation, in single target you should start pooling when the CD of Ascendance is at like 20 seconds. If you start pooling when it's already available, you're too late. Since you generate Maelstrom faster in AoE, pooling for P-Wave is fine when its cooldown is at around 10 to 15 seconds. But be careful while pooling, we don't want to waste a Tempest. Since you can't hold more than 2 of them, you should spend 1 Tempest if you're about to generate a third one. That means you have to keep your eyes on your Tempest Vigor while pooling. Let's talk about our CDs and the usage. Starting with P-Wave. As explained before, you optimally should be holding at least 1 Tempest when P-Wave comes off CD. Because the CD is 30 seconds, we want to use it ASAP. Of course, you have to spread your Flame Shocks before to benefit from the maximum amount of haste and lightning rods. P-Storm should always be used with 10 Maelstrom. In AoE, you should send 1 Tempest before you use it. See the advanced section for more thoughts on this. Doom Winds accelerates your Maelstrom generation in single target and AoE. In bigger pools, it's possible to cap Maelstrom with 1 Crash, so be ready to spend more frequently. It should always be active before you use P-Storm, because each of the 3 hits of P-Storm will then trigger Wind Fury for additional damage. In AoE, it does not matter if Doom Winds is desynced from Ascendance, but you should aim to use both together on bosses, so it's just easier if you keep the CDs synced the whole time. Ascendance can be an incredibly strong single target cooldown, but only if you prepare Tempest properly as explained before. In single target, you pop 1 Tempest, P-Wave and Doom Winds before entering Ascendance. During Ascendance, you just spam Windstrike and automatically spend Tempest that way. Hit P-Storm when you're at 10 Maelstrom during Doom Winds, preferably after initial Tempests. When fighting multiple targets, The easiest placer just spams Windstrike and spends Tempest in between manually. You want to set it up by spreading Flame Shocks, activating Crash, Doom Winds, P-Wave, send one Tempest and pop Ascendance. You will have to refresh the Crash buff once. This is done by spending all Maelstrom on a manual Tempest or Chain Lightning, repeat it in case of a refund, and then use Crash to refill your empty Maelstrom. The Windstrike spam is good in small pulls and as a beginner in general, but it's far from optimal when fighting more than 5 mobs. See the advanced section to learn how to handle bigger pulls. Another small note, when fighting only 2 or 3 mobs, your Windstrikes will often leave you far below 10 Maelstrom. You will have to use Crash to get closer to 10 for juicy Tempests or P-Storm. Now you have learned all the basics and are ready to play Shaman in keys. I would advise you to get some practice first before you listen to the advanced tricks and threats. Just play some keys and come back to this guide later. Listen through the practice part again if necessary and head to the advanced section if you feel confident. Congrats, you have made it to the advanced section. Here I will present you useful knowledge and optimization threads for keeping Tempests or squeezing out some more DPS by altering the default priority, especially during cooldowns. Let's start with something minor. You will often find you have a Voltaic Blaze proc at the end of a pack, and it can be useful to keep it for the next pull. So, if the pull is about to die, it can be worth it to not just send it out and finish the pack off with Storm Strikes or Chain Lightning, and just quickly build up a new one. And take this proc, walk with it, and just make your setup quicker on the next one, but just moving into the pack with Voltaic Blaze ready, and if your Flame Shocks pressed spread already. You might be sometimes wondering why you didn't get any Flame Shocks with Voltaic Blaze. There's a, let's say, bug, because there's a minor delay between the damage and the application of Flame Shock. It's 2 separate things. You can do the damage hit and turn around quickly, not facing the pack anymore. That way I dealt damage with Voltaic Blaze, but it didn't apply the Flame Shocks. It means you want to be facing the pack always to get all of them. Also means that no mobs behind you get the application. I damaged them. This one counted, this one didn't. I guess I'm facing the... yeah, this one is somehow in front of me, but this one didn't get it. It got the damage hit, I'm pretty sure. No, it didn't get that either. A really important thing to know about is how to keep your Tempests properly for the next pulls. You've learned already that you should not use them at the end of packs, so you don't waste them to execute them, but sometimes you have long travel distance between the packs. But what you can do is prepare your next Tempest to be ready when you spend Maelstrom, keep Maelstrom, and use a Healing Surge to get a new application and just extend it to 30 seconds again. This time I also wasted a Tempest, but in practice you can keep one Tempest, prepare a second one, and just do not activate it instantly, but activate it later. You can that way travel longer distances while saving your Tempests. This is extremely useful in dungeons like Motherload, where you usually have long walking distances between separate packs. Another possibility to extend your Tempest that a lot of people don't know about is via Arc Discharge. I can use this proc on a Chain Lightning and it refreshes the Tempest duration. So having an Arc Discharge can really help you to keep your Tempests for the next pull as well. I have explained before that you should pool at least 1 Tempest for an upcoming P-Wave and 2 for an upcoming Ascendance. If possible, it can be worth it to pool even more than that. You cannot hold more than 2 Tempests, but you can already fill up your progress towards additional Tempests by spending Maelstrom with Chain Lightning and proccing Awakening Storms. You can see here that holding 2 Tempests have 2 Awakening Storm stacks and will get another Tempest from spending. That means I have effectively prepared 3 Tempests and the 4th one from Awakening Storms follows shortly after. While following this strat, you have to watch your Tempest Vigora and be careful not to get too greedy. It is easy to waste Tempests this way. If you proc both a Tempest from spending and from Awakening Storms, you might override one and effectively lose it. Another issue is that the Vigora is often not accurate. You might proc a Tempest a bit earlier than expected and lose it because of that. Improving your pooling is one of the most important things to work on to Giga Blast in keys. I will show you 2 examples. In this clip you can see me finishing a pack holding 2 Tempests and having progress towards further Tempests already. The DPS numbers are a bit inflated because Shu's playing augmentation, I get a PI and I have a fully stacked Eye of Kazan. I pop P-Wave to apply Rod and get the haste, fire my first Tempest to prime to Lightning Bolt, and then I just spam Windstrike. You see that playing Ascendance and single target is a no-brainer. All my damage comes from the good preparation and of course my team support. The only advanced move you can see me do is that I'm delaying my Peace Storm a lot. I managed to ramp 5 Lightning Bolts before I use it, giving it a significant damage boost. Let's get to a really interesting topic, how to improve your DPS on huge pulls. In this next clip you can see me make use of pre-pulled Tempests. You will not be able to do this before the key anymore in Season 3, but you can also replicate it with Tempests pulled on a pack before a big pull. You can see that I use some Chain Lightnings to get progress towards further Tempests. If you do this while the tank is gathering the pull, be careful not to get too much threat. Even if you don't extend your pooling, in case of a huge pull, which the first pull in most dungeons usually is, you should change your Ascendance playstyle a bit. First of all, you pop P-Wave into Tempest as usual, but you delay using your Doom Winds. You pop it later during Ascendance after sending your early Tempests. This way, you make better use of your P-Wave Lightning Rods, and also increase Doom Wind's direct damage, which is noticeable when hitting many targets. Furthermore, you can manually spend 10 Maelstrom on Chain Lightning during Ascendance to speed up your Tempest progression, since Windstrike will only spend 5. This is especially useful if you did not prepare Tempest well before popping CDs. Lastly, using Crash to fill up your Maelstrom for a Tempest after spending it manually is a good decision as well. You can try to follow this concept in your head during Ascendance. Press Windstrike once, spend your Maelstrom manually until you don't get a refund, use Crash to refill your Maelstrom, and then repeat this loop again. Once you've sent out like 3 or 4 Tempests, you can pop Doom Winds and hit Peace Storm before it runs out. The combo of Windstrike into Spender into Crash spends 50 Maelstrom, the same as 3 Windstrikes would. That means you cannot fall behind on Tempest progression with this strat compared to the Windstrike spam, but you can gain momentum in case you are lucky with Maelstrom refunds. It does need fast decision making though, to make sure you don't lose GCDs, meaning it's not easy to pull off consistently. Let's finish this guide off with a few minor hints and tricks. Since Crash is our most important Maelstrom generator, you have to position and face your character in a way that you hit all targets. The Crash cone is quite long but not very wide. You can see here that I'm not hitting every dummy unless I'm facing them properly. While Doom Winds is active, you want to maximize your Crash and Stormstrike usage. Ignore Voltaic Blaze during this time. It's also good to know that using Chain Lightning with Arc Discharge might fully reset your Crash Lightning. I've explained before that it's a DPS gain to delay using your Peace Storm to buff it with Lightning Woes. You might also be able to react to a Doom Winds proc of the tier set this way. But this is rare and usually only possible if you get a refund at the same time as the proc. To squeeze out a bit more single target damage, you can try the following tips. Adapt the priority of Stormstrike, Crash and Voltaic Blaze depending on a few conditions. You can see that I track the 4 set stacks with a small number on my Crash icon. You can lower the priority of Crash if you don't have any stacks, and increase it above Stormstrike when Doom Winds is up and you're about to overcap stacks. Also, you can increase the priority of Voltaic Blaze if you're at high Maelstrom stacks and would spend with the following global. This way you can avoid wasting Voltaic Blaze procs. But don't do this when kept on Maelstrom or when Doom Winds is running. Furthermore, you can make use of an Arc Discharge in case you can't press any generators and are below 5 Maelstrom to still send out an instant Lightning Bolt. And lastly, a reminder that you can use Chain Lightning to either pool or hold your Tempest in single target. I have mentioned in the Lightning Rod section that target swapping for rods is usually not necessary. Even at this point I would still say that actively spreading rods and big pulls is not worth it, because Chain Lightning has a high chance to apply a rod to a new target and Tempest should simply always hit the priority or center target. As you can see here, Chain Lightning will not refresh a rod on a secondary target, resulting in small windows of Lightning Rod downtime. That means, when fighting like 2 or 3 mobs of equal priority, target swapping to maximize the lightning rod uptime should be considered. The best example for this is the first boss of Priory, where both mobs share damage taken. I have now taught you everything you have to know to fully blast keys. If you want a summary of what's most important, I would break it down to 2 sentences. First, track and keep an eye on your Tempest progression. Second, respect and prepare your P-Wave windows properly. Thank you for watching this guide. I hope you can make use of it and improve your performance. Season 3 will come in August, and looking at the current state of Stormbringer Enhancement Shaman on PTR, you will be able to apply almost everything you have learned in the same way. A big change is that Windstrike will auto-fire Tempests even if you are primed to Chain Lightning. I absolutely hate this. I hope Blizzard will take a look again at how Thoriums interacts with Tempest and how our new T-set can give us Tempests without wasting them. But this is a topic for another video. Enjoy playing Shaman and make sure to drop by in my Twitch streams in the future.